It sounds like somewhere you'd get tested for chlamydia, but it's actually one of London's weirdest post-war redevelopments. This is the Brunswick Centre. The Brunswick Centre emerged from a plan to redevelop this area of London, which was filled with quite low quality terraced housing. Now, the original plan was for this megastructure to go all the way along to the Euston Road. It would have been much longer than it was now, back when megastructures were in fashion. All the elements of the building would be in these two long structures with this street down the middle. Patrick Hodgkinson was the lead architect on this. Now, interestingly, there's an interview that he did with The Guardian. He talks about working in Alvar Aalto's office, the Finnish architect, and he said he was inspired by him. And in fact, he doesn't consider himself to be a follower of brutalism and doesn't consider this building to be a brutalist building. Also, interestingly, Patrick Hodgkinson said that he wanted it to be painted. Now, this raised my eyebrows because a lot of concrete purists would say the concrete looks better when it's not painted. You know, your mum might say, why don't you put a lick of magnolia paint on the concrete to freshen it up somewhat? But actually, if you look at the National Theatre, you know that that looks a lot better without any magnolia paint freshening it up. So, project was begun at the end of the 50s, very long gestation period, went through lots of changes in the 60s. At one stage it was private development, the London Borough of Camden came along and it was going to be council housing. There were plans for health centres and various other things. When it was built, it was done somewhat on the cheap. Patrick Hodgkinson left before the project was completed in 1972. And it never quite lived up to its initial aims and ambitions, was somewhat unloved through the 80s and 90s, and then at the start of the 2000s, it was redeveloped once more with more shopping, cinema, and rehabilitation of the residential flats. So after a period of decline, around a quarter of a century ago, they refurbished the Brunswick Centre and they gentrified it, and it now has its own Waitrose. So this design is not unique. This idea of building a megastructure on two sides with tiers coming towards the middle with a street in the middle is not unique to the Brunswick Centre. You can also see it in places like the Alexandra and Ainsworth estate on Rowley Way, which we're going to look at in another episode. Also, there's a small estate in London Fields near me in East London, which has the same design. This design actually recurs quite a lot. Paul Rudolph in the USA was also proposing things like this. The idea being that rather than having one tall block of flats, you have these two. So you still have high density, but then you have this public space in the middle, and the flats kind of look down on it to create a sense of community. So as with Neve Brown's Alexandra and Ainsworth estate, Rowley Way, you can see the way they have the skeleton kind of up the, well, is it the back of the building or is it the front of the building? You can't really tell. But in order to have these step terraces facing the central street, you then put the deck access and the services and the supports for the building on the back. But it kind of looks brutalist in that you can see how the building's made. You can see the engineering of it. So we're in Bloomsbury. Now, it's actually quite interesting. We're in central London. There's a lot of historic buildings around, but in the 50s and 60s, this area was one of the parts of London that was earmarked for modernisation. Hard to believe, but there's the University of London, which has the education building by Dennis Lasdon. There is Centre Point, the Centre Point Tower by Richard Seifert, St Giles, used to be YMCA, now a hotel, big Brutalist building. And in fact, this whole area was proposed to be a part of an even bigger redevelopment scheme, the Colin Buchanan scheme, which is illustrated in Traffic in Towns, shows levels in Fitzrovia. There was going to be different levels, pedestrian levels, road levels, and all these new buildings. It was going to look very, very futuristic, very swinging 60s. Now, until recently, there was a lot of posters in people's windows in the Brunswick Centre saying, "We're cold." I think there was a lot of problems with the flats. I'm not sure if they've been solved now, but it was certainly very noticeable seeing all these posters in all of the flat windows during winter saying, "We're cold." This is often a problem with these buildings from the 60s and 70s. They don't have the levels of insulation and what have you that we would put in today's buildings. They come from a different era before those things were such a key part of housing design. So they do need maintenance and they do need to be refurbished in a way that is sensitive to the building as well. Having looked around the building again today, I'm puzzling over what Patrick Hodgkinson said in that Guardian interview about not being a follower of New Brutalism and wanting to have it painted. It just seems very odd, and it does really look like a megastructure as well. It's got a lot of those qualities. And here's a lovely little secret surprise right next to the Brunswick Centre. This is the Marchmont Community Garden, so well cared for. If you find yourself down here, you want to have a little bit of a picnic after looking around the Brunswick Centre, come down here. Very nice. This is where the Brunswick Centre was supposed to continue north towards King's Cross. You might recognise the building from the early 70s film The Passenger. Jack Nicholson runs up the stairs of the building. Now, Michelangelo Antonioni was a director who knew his modern architecture. Let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested in a film about him. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Fragments of the Future, looking at the building here in Bloomsbury in London. I would love it if you could subscribe, or maybe you want to leave a comment. That would be great too. My name's been Christopher Beanland. Until the next time we meet, thank you for watching. Bye-bye. And then just say something earnest to camera.